Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Hare Krishna and welcome to day 2 of Navaratri and our Navaratri Katha sessions. Yesterday we ended off at a very energetic, a very intense point in our saga, finding out how Adishakti, Parashakti became Shailaputri after having already become Sati, the daughter of Daksha. So today we are going to be continuing with our Katha in honor of the divine goddess, who is none other than the very shadow of our supreme dearest Govinda. But of course, we can't enter into the divine realm without first singing Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Radhe Govinda Jaya Radhe Govinda Shri Shri Radha Govinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai The Eternal Abode of Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we are going to be continuing reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the condensed version by His Grace Purna Pragya, lovingly compiled from the cantos and the translations and the purports of Srila Prabhupada. And today celebrates the goddess Brahmacharini. And so it is advised that we wear orange. And this goddess Brahmacharini is a yogini, steeped in meditation upon her Lord. She carries a kamandalu and a string of Japa Mala, constantly chanting the divine name of Lord Mahadev, all the names of Lord Mahadev. She has tied her hair into a top knot, and her purpose is completely fixed on gaining the heart of her dearmost Lord. So we'll continue. We'll dive into the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. First, we will chant our mystical incantation, meditating and praying to the divine form of Lord Vasudeva, who we heard yesterday that Lord Shiva himself meditates on. And we heard that Vasudeva is not just a person, but it is also an eternal abode and a state of being. The Lord, who is the controller of the heart and the senses, the protector of the innermost chambers of the heart, and that guiding force that is within every single one of us. So, without further ado, here's our mystical incantation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And we'll start today with a verse from the Brahma Samhita. This is Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 44. Sristi stiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharti Durga ichana rupamapi yasya chachestate sa Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The eternal potency Maya, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Chit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. The world in which Brahma takes his stand and hymns the Lord of Goloka is Devi Dham, consisting of the 14 worlds, and Durga is its presiding deity. She is 10-armed, representing the 10-fold fruitive activities. She rides on the lion, representing her heroic prowess. She tramples down Mahishasur, representing the subduer of vices. She is the mother of 2 sons, Kartikeya and Ganesh, representing beauty and success. She is placed between Lakshmi and Saraswati, representing mundane opulence and mundane knowledge. She is armed with the 20 weapons representing the various pious activities enjoined by the Vedas for suppression of vices. She holds the snake representing the beauty of destructive time. Such is Durga, possessing all these manifold forms. Durga is possessed of Durga, which means a prison house. When jivas, begotten of the marginal potency, forget the service of Krishna, they are confined in the mundane prison house, the citadel of Durga. The wheel of karma is the instrument of punishment at this place. The work of purifying these penalized jivas is the duty developed upon Durga. She is incessantly engaged in discharging the same by the will of Govinda. When, luckily, the forgetfulness of Govinda on the part of imprisoned jivas is remarked by them by coming in contact with self-realized souls, and their natural aptitude for the loving service of Krishna is aroused, meaning, when these souls begin to remember Govinda, Durga herself then becomes the agency of their deliverance by the divine will of Govinda. So it behooves everybody to obtain the guileless grace of Durga, the mistress of this prison house, by propitiating her with the selfless service of Krishna. The boons received from Durga in the shape of wealth, property, recovery from illness, of wife and sons, should be realized as the deluding kindness of Durga. The mundane psychical jubilations of Dasha Mahavidya, the 10 goddesses or forms of Durga, are elaborated for the delusion of the encumbered fettered souls of this world. Jiva is a spiritual atomic part of Krishna. When he forgets his service of Krishna, he is at once deflected by the attracting power of Maya in this world, who throws him into the whirlpool of mundane, fruitive activity, or karma, by confining him in a gross body constituted by 5 material elements, their 5 attributes, and 11 senses, resembling the garb of a prisoner. In this whirlpool, Jiva has experience of happiness and miseries, heaven and hell. Besides this, there is a subtle body, consisting of the mind, intelligence, and ego, inside the gross body. By means of the subtle body, the jiva forsakes one gross body and takes recourse in another. The jiva cannot get rid of the subtle body, full of nescience and evil desires, until and unless he is liberated. On getting rid of the subtle body, he bathes in the viraja and goes up to Haridham. Such are the duties performed by Durga in accordance with the will of Govinda. In the Bhagavat Sloka, the relationship between Durga and the conditioned souls has thus been described. Durga, worshipped by the people of this mundane world, is the Durga described above. But the spiritual Durga, mentioned in this mantra, which is the outer covering of the spiritual realm of the Supreme Lord, is the eternal maidservant of Krishna, and is therefore the transcendental reality whose shadow, the Durga of this world, functions in this mundane world as her maidservant. So we see that Durga Devi is functioning in accordance with Govindaji himself. We can always remember, and it says that we should gain her grace just to get closer to Govinda. She is the only one who can help us out of this prison house. And so it behooves all of us. It is for our own benefit that we ask her for her grace and for her mercy to get closer and closer out of all of these coverings of this material mind and senses, out of all of these ropes that bind us to miseries. Then we beg her for her mercy. Show us, Govinda, your own master. Show us to the lotus feet of our Govinda Dev. We have no shelter other than you. Only you can help us out of this place. This is your own abode. This is your playground. You are the only mistress here. We cannot be controllers, but you can. You can show us to the divine feet of Govinda. So yesterday, we heard how Sati, the daughter of Daksha, got Lord Shiva as her very own Lord. Not only that, we heard how Lord Shiva and Sati were quite happy together. But Daksha was very upset. He felt that Lord Shiva was not a fit match for his princess daughter. And so he created such offenses to such a great Vaishnav. And because of that, Sati gave up her life, saying, if one hears such blasphemy of the Supreme Lord or the devotees of the Supreme Lord, those who have the spiritual opulence of devotional service, then one should immediately kill that offender. If one cannot kill the offender, one should leave that place. Sati is saying, since I cannot do either, since I cannot kill you, my dear father, and since I cannot leave this place, I will give up my body, and thus give up all attachment, all contamination. I will give up all connection with you, and thereby I will take another form, which will not be bound by this connection with you, which I deem to be so abominable. Dressed in a saffron sari, she sits down and faces north, concentrating her yogic powers on her life air. She brings them up through her body and up until she concentrates them between her eyebrows. With the fire of her life air and the fire of her anger, immediately she gives up that body. Now the followers of Lord Shiva are distraught. They have witnessed the demise of their very own goddess, and they have to return to their snowy mountain abode and tell Lord Shiva that his goddess is no more. Lord Shiva sent his own followers with her to protect her. Although we described Lord Shiva yesterday as Trikalagya, he can see past, present, and future. Lord Shiva is all auspicious and all-knowing. And so because of his connection with Lord Vasudeva, because of his meditating on Lord Vasudeva, he knows everything. And so he already knew that this would not be a good end if his wife were to go to this sacrifice being held by Daksha. A sacrifice where he himself was being cut out, offended, and neglected. However, feeling such kindness and compassion within her heart, feeling such moroseness on being separated from her family, Sati thinks, I have to go. I must go. There must be some way to speak to my father. There must be some reasoning with him. So now, we enter into our story. Just after the followers of Lord Shiva, headed by Nandi, have told Lord Shiva that their goddess who brought springtime to Mount Kailash is no more. There have been various parts that I've adapted from places like Skanda Purana and places from Srimad Bhagavatam. So before I jump into reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm going to begin with a small piece that I adapted, getting into the mood and the emotions of having to express this bad news to Lord Shiva himself. There was complete silence throughout the entire mountain of Kailash. Unable to face their master, Nandi and the others stared down at the ground mutely. They stood upon soft grass and newly sprouted flowers. Now it was always springtime on this snowy mountain abode. Their lives had all been completely and irrevocably changed by one person. One of the flowers was crushed beneath Nandi's weight. As he shifted, he could see the petals struggling to regain their former balance and survive despite the harsh terrain and environment around them. He couldn't help but see the connection between that one flower sprout and his former queen. The thought of her shook Nandi from his thoughts, while the most terrible sound he had ever heard shook the mountain to its very core. For those of us who don't know, Nandi is the bull carrier of Lord Shiva. It is described that he can take many forms. So he can become a person, he can become a bull at will. He does anything in order to be ready for the service of Lord Shiva. The sound was not only coming from in front of Nandi, it seemed to be behind him as well, all around him, and encircling the mountain itself. As the mountain shook, so did the hearts of all those present. It was a moment before they could clearly make out the rumbling. There was no earthquake. There was no shifting of the plains. Instead, in indescribable grief, Lord Shiva, Mahadev, God of gods and the Lord of the ghosts, was laughing. The ghastly laughter rose up from his core deep inside his chest, where his broken heart no doubt was. His shoulders trembled with each chuckle that escaped him, and it seemed that the entire mountain trembled in response. The ground beneath them shifted and swayed, and the many followers of Mahadev struggled to maintain their balance and composure. Nandi looked at his other associates, and he saw his own confusion mirrored on every face. At all times, Nandi had the utmost love and respect for his master. Whenever he gazed upon the face of the Lord he had given his life to, his heart felt nothing but complete surges of gratitude and devotion. But for the first time, Nandi felt a new emotion as he looked into the eyes of a master that he wasn't sure he recognized. He felt fear. In fact, he knew that the entire universe felt fear. And slowly, still laughing, that heart-wrenching sound pulling tears from the eyes of all the followers, Lord Shiva began to rise from his seat. His laughter sounded crazed, maddened, but his eyes were full of sadness. The two warring emotions on his face made the hearts of all assembled beat quicker and harder than ever before as they all wondered, what would the god of destruction do next? And now, we delve into the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam to find out what awaits the entire universe. When Lord Shiva heard from Nandi about Sati's suicide and the defeat of his followers at the hands of the Ribu demigods, he became furious. Lord Shiva had not rejected the possibility that Sati might resolve the family dispute, but now, with this ugly turn of events, he decided to kill Daksha himself in retaliation. And for this purpose, he snatched a hair from his head while biting his lip in rage. Laughing like a madman, Lord Shiva dashed that blazing hair onto the ground, and as a result, a fearful black demon named Virabhadra was created. As tall as the sky and bright as 3 suns, the demon had thousands of arms, sharp teeth, and blazing hair. Adorned with a garland of human heads, he stood before Lord Shiva with folded hands and inquired, "What shall I do, my lord?" In some Puranas, it is stated that at this moment, not only does Virabhadra arrive, but a fearsome female demon also appears, named Bhadrakali. Lord Shiva ordered Virabhadra, who was the personified anger of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus fully confident of his prowess, Lord Shiva said, "Go and kill Daksha and destroy his sacrifice." After circumambulating Lord Shiva, Virabhadra departed along with many of Lord Shiva's followers, all of whom created a tumultuous uproar. As Virabhadra ran with his uplifted trident, his bangles appeared to roar, and he looked fearful enough to kill even death itself. Meanwhile, the assembly at Daksha's sacrificial arena began to perceive an encroaching darkness, and while speculating about it, they came to understand that it was being caused by a dust storm. With great anxiety, they said to one another, "There is no being. There is no wind, no herd of cows, nor is it possible that this dust storm could be caused by a mob of plunderers, for the powerful king Bari is still ruling the earth. Is the dissolution of the world now at hand?" The women, headed by Prashuti, the mother of Sati, replied, "This dangerous condition is the result of Daksha's insulting behavior, which caused the innocent Sati to give up her body as we all looked on. At the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva laughs and dances proudly, and with his trident he pierces the rulers of the various planets." While such talk was going on, Daksha began to see fearful omens in the sky and upon the land. Thereafter, Lord Shiva's followers surrounded the sacrificial arena and began to create disturbances. So here we see a very graphic and formidable example of what happens when offenses toward Vaishnavas are made and nothing is done to stop them. We see what happens when, in a sense, the women of the society are insulted and nothing happens. There is a complete crumbling, a complete destruction of that society which maintains such abominable activities. Lord Shiva's followers were all of short stature, having black and yellowish complexions, and they menacingly wielded their various weapons. Some pulled down the pillars that supported the pandal. Some entered the ladies' quarters, and others began to destroy the sacrificial arena. While others engaged in breaking sacrificial paraphernalia and extinguishing the sacrificial fire, others passed urine on the sacrificial arena. Some of Lord Shiva's followers blocked the way of the fleeing sages, and others arrested the demigods who tried to escape. No one was spared. Maniman captured the chief priest Brigu, and Virabhadra arrested Daksha. Chandesha caught hold of Pusha, and Nandi arrested Bhaga. To take revenge for his previous insulting behavior, Virabhadra violently tore off Brigu's mustache. Next he caught hold of Bhaga, who had moved his eyebrows during the cursing of Lord Shiva, and after angrily throwing him upon the ground, he plucked out his eyes. Virabhadra then knocked out Daksha and Pusha's teeth, since both of them had shown them as an insult to Lord Shiva. Finally, Virabhadra sat down on Daksha's chest and tried to cut off his head with various weapons. When all of his attempts proved futile, Virabhadra next tried to cut off Daksha's head with the use of mantras, but still he could hardly even scratch the skin. Such is Daksha's prowess. Virabhadra then saw the wooden device that had been used for killing sacrificial animals, and by using it, he was finally able to cut off Daksha's head. Many say that it took several tries, so he sits on Daksha's chest, hacking at his head. Again, this is a very graphic example of what happens when Vaishnav aparad is occurring and goes on unchecked. Upon witnessing this, Lord Shiva's ghostly followers cheered with joy, while the Brahmanas began to wail with grief. Virabhadra then picked up Daksha's head and threw it as an offering into the southern side of the sacrificial fire. In this way, Lord Shiva's followers destroyed Daksha's sacrifice, and finally, after setting fire to the whole arena, departed for Kailash. Having been defeated and injured by Lord Shiva's soldiers, the Brahmanas and demigods went to take shelter of Lord Brahma. After offering their obeisance to the grandsire, they anxiously explained all that had taken place. Actually, Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma had foreseen what would happen, and for that reason, they had not attended the sacrifice of Daksha. So they knew that this great aparad, this great offense to the Vaishnavas and to Sati, Parashakti herself would take place. And so they would not step foot in a place where such abominable behavior would be supported. After hearing from the demigods, Lord Brahma replied, "You cannot become happy by performing a sacrifice and at the same time blaspheming a great personality. By excluding Lord Shiva from his share of the sacrificial offerings, you have all become offenders at his lotus feet. Therefore you must go and surrender unto him by falling down at his lotus feet without any mental reservations, and in this way he may become pleased. Lord Shiva is so powerful that he can immediately destroy all the planets along with their presiding deities. Because he has become very aggrieved due to the loss of his wife, as well as Daksha's cruel words, it behooves you to go and beg for his forgiveness." Thereafter, Lord Brahma escorted the demigods and great sages to Lord Shiva's abode, which is known as Kailash Hill. While on the way, they passed over the Saugandhika forest, where Alakpuri, the abode of Kuvera, is situated. The whole area was astonishingly beautiful due to the forests, filled with all varieties of fruit trees and flowers, as well as the lakes which abounded with lotus flowers and swans. The demigods admired the bathing ghats, whose stairways were made of Vaidurya stone. At Kailash Hill, there were many waterfalls, whose pleasing sounds combined with the crowing of peacocks and humming of bees. The whole area was inhabited by Kinnaras and Gandharvas, along with their beautiful consorts, the Apsaras, and within the caves lived Siddhas in the companies of their wives. The entire region was filled with the very best of trees, so that the scented breezes served to agitate the minds of the celestial women for further enjoyment. Indeed, due to an abundance of desire trees, the abode of Lord Shiva appeared to resemble the planet of even Lord Krishna in the spiritual world. Because of the many varieties of lotuses and other fragrant flowers, the entire forest seemed to be one great garden wherein all kinds of animals roamed, including the musk deer. In Kailash there are two rivers, the Nanda and Alakananda, which are sanctified by the dust from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. The celestial damsels come there to bathe in these rivers after having diminished their lust by engaging with their husbands. After the damsels of heaven bathe, the water becomes yellowish and fragrant due to the kumkum on their bodies. For this reason, the elephants that come to bathe along with their wives drink the water, even if they are not really thirsty. The demigods saw a small lake named Alakananda where Sati used to bathe, and finally they came to a place where they saw a great banyan tree, 100 yojanas tall. 1 yojana is equal to 8 miles. So this tree was 100 yojanas tall. Due to the shade of this tree, the air was permanently cool, and because there were no birds' nests, the atmosphere was calm and quiet. The demigods saw Lord Shiva sitting underneath this tree, and because his expression was very grave, it appeared as if he had given up all anger. Now his anger is exhausted. He is simply sitting gravely. Lord Shiva was seated upon a deer skin and was surrounded by great souls like Kuvera, Narada, and the 4 Kumaras. Due to his body being smeared with ashes, he appeared to be like an evening cloud, and his hair was decorated with the symbol of a crescent moon. Because he was engaged in speaking about the absolute truth, the forefinger of his right hand, which held a string of Rudraksha beads, was in the mode of argument. His left leg was placed upon his right thigh, and his left hand was resting upon his left thigh, a sitting posture that is called Virasana. The demigods and Brahmanas offered their obeisances to Lord Shiva with folded hands. In turn, when Lord Shiva saw Lord Brahma before him, he stood up and then bowed to touch his feet, as did all of the sages, headed by Narada. After being worshipped, Lord Brahma smiled to conceal his fear that Lord Shiva might still be enraged. Within the Srimad Bhagavatam, even Lord Brahma himself states that he cannot estimate the power of Lord Shiva. While he states that others in the world may become, and they may obtain the post of being the creator, they may become Lord Brahma, he says that never is there anyone who can become like Lord Shiva. Lord Brahma then said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I know that you are the controller of the entire material manifestation, and thus you create, maintain, and annihilate it exactly as a spider creates, maintains, and winds up its web. My dear Lord, devotees who have fully dedicated their lives unto your lotus feet certainly see the Paramatma within everyone, and thus do not discriminate between one living entity and another. They never become overwhelmed by anger like animals that see nothing without differentiation. Those persons who see everything with differentiation, who are attached to fruitive activities, and who are so mean-minded that they become pained upon seeing the flourishing condition of others, and thus give them distress by uttering harsh words, have already been killed by providence. For this reason, there is no need for them to be killed again by an exalted personality like you. Materialists are bewildered by Maya, and so a saintly person compassionately does not take their offenses seriously or try to retaliate." Here he's trying to calm Lord Shiva down just in case he may still be angry. "My dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus you should be merciful toward those that are bewildered. You are a shareholder of the sacrificial offerings, but the foolish priests neglected you, and as a result you destroyed everything. Now, because the sacrifice remains unfinished, please do the needful to restore it, and then take your rightful share. Let Daksha get back his life, Bhrigu his mustache, Bhaga his eyes, and Pusha his teeth. In addition, let the Brahmanas who have been injured by your soldiers become healed by your own grace." Lord Shiva replied, "My dear father, I do not mind the childish offenses of the less intelligent demigods. I have punished them just to bring them back to the right path. Since Daksha's head has already been burned to ashes, he shall receive the head of a goat. Bhaga will be able to see his share of the sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, or if he eats independently, he will have to be satisfied with dough made from chickpea flour. Bhrigu will get the beard from the goat's head that is given to Daksha. The demigods and priests who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrificial offerings will recover from all their injuries. However, those whose arms were severed will have to work with the arms of the Ashwini Kumars, and those whose hands were cut off will have to work with the hands of Pusha." Everyone was satisfied with the arrangement, and thereafter Bhrigu invited Lord Shiva to come to the sacrificial arena. Thus Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and all the demigods and sages went to the place where the sacrifice had been demolished. Under Lord Shiva's direction, Daksha's body was joined with the head of a goat that was to have been offered in sacrifice. As soon as the goat's head was joined to his body, Daksha regained consciousness, and upon awakening from his slumber, he saw Lord Shiva standing before him. Due to seeing Lord Shiva with a respectful attitude, Daksha's heart, which had been polluted by envy, became immediately cleansed. Daksha wanted to offer suitable prayers to Lord Shiva, but as he sorrowfully remembered the death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled up with tears and his voice choked up so that he could not speak. Having come to his senses, Daksha pacified his mind with great endeavor. He then prayed, "My dear Lord, I committed a great offense, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have exhibited your great favor by punishing me. I did not know your glories, and thus I criticized you in the assembly of demigods and sages. As a result, I was destined to glide down into hell, but you have saved me from that fate by punishing me, and thus bringing me to my right consciousness." After being pardoned by Lord Shiva, Daksha took permission from Lord Brahma and resumed the performance of his sacrifice with the help of the Brahmanas. So one of my friends is asking, where was Lord Vishnu at this point? Now we will find out. Daksha is now to resume the sacrifice. First, the sacrificial arena was purified, and for this purpose, a method of obtaining oblations into the fire called purudasha was employed. After the sanctity of the sacrificial arena had been fully restored, when Daksha offered ghee into the fire, as mantras from the Yajur Veda were being chanted, Lord Vishnu appeared there, riding upon the shoulders of Garuda. So he appears immediately as soon as this sacrifice is now resumed properly. He is the result of this entire sacrifice. So when they were performing the sacrifice without Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma themselves would not even attend. But as soon as they began to pray in the right frame of mind, offering all respects to the great Vaishnav Lord Shiva, then the object and the goal of all sacrifices, Lord Vishnu, immediately appears on the back of Garuda. The Lord's great effulgence diminished the luster of all others present, and in his 8 hands he held a conch shell, wheel, club, lotus flower, arrow, bow, shield, and sword. Due to his various ornaments, the Lord's entire body resembled a blossoming tree, beautifully decorated with various kinds of flowers. The Lord's enchanting smile captivated all those who saw him, especially the devotees. The white chamaras that appeared on both sides looked like swans, and the white canopy overhead appeared like the moon. As soon as Lord Vishnu became visible, all the demigods and sages, including Brahma and Lord Shiva, offered their obeisances by falling down straight before him. Thus, even though Brahma had previously referred to Lord Shiva as supreme, now both he and Lord Shiva fell prostrated before Lord Vishnu to offer their respectful obeisances. The demigods and sages then stood before Lord Vishnu with folded hands and offered their prayers with great awe and veneration. Everyone admitted their own faults and glorified the Lord to the best of their ability. Lord Shiva himself prayed, "My dear Lord, my mind and consciousness are always fixed upon your lotus feet, which are worshipped by all liberated sages. Because my mind is engaged in this way, I am no longer disturbed by persons who blaspheme me, claiming that my activities are not pure." Lord Vishnu replied by instructing Daksha about his supreme position. "O twice-born one, I am the original cause of all causes, but because I expand myself to act through my material energy, my different grades of representations are variously named. Thus, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are not different from me, nor are any of the other living beings. Only one who is in ignorance thinks that Lord Shiva or anyone else is independent of me. Just as no one considers the head and other bodily limbs to be separate from the whole body, so my devotees see everything in relationship with me. Thereafter, Daksha worshipped Lord Vishnu by resuming his sacrificial performance. After completing the sacrifice, he very respectfully worshipped Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva separately with their respective shares of prasadam. Finally, after satisfying all others present, Daksha took his avabrita bath, and he felt completely satisfied because he was once again situated on the correct path of religion. The demigods then blessed Daksha so that he might always increase in piety, and thereafter they departed for their respective abodes. After giving up her body, Sati was born as the daughter of Menaka, the king of the Himalayas. Later on, she once again accepted Lord Shiva as her husband, since that is their eternal relationship. Maitreya Muni concluded, "My dear Vidura, I heard this story of the Daksha yagya from Uddhava, the great disciple of Brihaspati. If one hears and describes this narration with faith and devotion, he will certainly become cleansed of all the contamination of material existence." Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Mahadev ki jai. All glories to our dear Supreme Lord Vishnu. So, according to Skanda Purana, the Devi Bhagavat Purana, and many, many other Puranas, it is said that after this, Lord Shiva, in his grief, gathers up the remains of Sati, which were at that sacrificial arena. And in grief, he travels all throughout the universes with them, lamenting terribly. And in very many places, it is stated that finally, seeing that the balance of this universe, which does depend on Lord Shiva, was teetering, they all went to petition Lord Vishnu. They said, "Please do something." So they say that with his Sudarshan Chakra, Lord Vishnu divided the body parts of Sati that Lord Shiva was in his grief carrying around, and they fell to different parts, becoming the Shakti Pits. And in this way, Lord Shiva was shaken out of his grief. But at this point, he decides to withdraw from everyone and everything, feeling the emptiness within his heart, feeling that unbalance from losing his counterpart, his divine consort, his other half. He feels such imbalance that he decides, "I don't want anything more to do with any of you. I don't want anything more to do with any of this." And so he goes deep in meditation. In a small segment, I have adapted that section and tried to describe the grief of Lord Shiva. His grief was terrible. His gaunt and distraught face heart-wrenching. His soul-deafening cries shaking the directions, until finally he shut down. Taking shelter of a meditation on heartbreak, he went inward. He had been famous for his renunciation before, but now he would renounce his own heart. Without her, it all meant nothing. So, the goddess did the one thing no one else could do. She would save the universe by coming back for him. Proud, graceful Sati was as devoted to Lord Mahadev as he was to her. They were a match the likes of which had never been seen before. He delighted in her countenance, her gentle speech, and her care. His life of hardened asceticism finally had a touch of home. The fateful day she wished to visit her father, despite Mahadev's advice. He knew nothing auspicious would come from that moment, but hearing about her death later from his bereaved followers drove him to the very brink of insanity. His anger shook universes, but his grief was much, much worse. Denouncing everything and everyone, he sought refuge deep within crematoriums, desiring not to be bothered. He would withdraw himself from all universal affairs, consequences be damned. But how would the universe have balance without the God of gods? The elusive Lord Shiva could not be reached. The gods conferred and prayed. They wished and hoped. They sent out their desires and prayers for someone to do something. Someone had to restore the balance that had been lost, but who could? Lord Shiva would accept none but his eternal consort. Kind-hearted Shakti Devi did the thing no one else could do. She was born as the daughter of the king of the mountains, Himavan. Parvatraj named his daughter of golden limbs and great beauty, Parvati. She became known as Himavati, as the daughter of Himavan, and she was known as the daughter of the mountains, Shaila Putri. For the first time in thousands of celestial years, the gods saw a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this girl would be the answer to all of their prayers. Perhaps she could be the key to unlock the mysterious Mahadev. But where was Mahadev? And how would the two find each other? O great goddess, all glories unto you. You are meant to be showered with prayers and adoration. With the moon in your hair, you embody the softness and the strength that permeates all of nature. Riding on Nandi and holding in your two hands a trident and a lotus, you encourage us to look inward, to seek the Lord of our hearts. You push us to move back to the basics as the goddess who guards the root chakra. You remind us of the importance of our foundations, and you teach us the importance of searching for our highest truth. O gentle goddess, you came to ease the pain and suffering of Lord Mahadev when no one else could. O expansion of the supreme goddess of fortune, please bless us with determination, grace, and love on our own quests as we seek to find our complete selves. O wonderful Devi, who is Govinda's own shadow, who can say what immense love you have for him? Please bless us with your favor. If you are pleased with us, then he will be also. And in prayer to the goddess Brahmacharini, there is another section. It was the intense sound that first drew Parvati to the mouth of the cave. The daughter of the mountains was not unfamiliar with the caves nestled deep within her kingdom, but this one was different. It radiated with an effulgence and an undeniable energy that coiled around her, gently urging her closer and closer to this cave. She was unprepared for what she saw once inside the dense, dark cave. A figure sat shrouded in shadow, and yet self-illuminated. His eyes half closed, his body straight like a column, his hair matted and hanging down his back like great vines decorating a strong banyan tree. Vibrating the syllable Om, the sound seemed to come from both inside and outside the cave all at once. With all her soul, she wanted to know more about the personality in front of her, but her voice had fled along with her heart. That is Mahadev. The gods need his assistance. We need Lord Shiva. Parvati heard her father's words as though he were miles away. Only his name had penetrated her haze. Mahadev, Lord Shiva. And she knew without a doubt she belonged to him. The situation was more dire than anyone wanted to admit. Wicked asuras were attacking. The devas had been driven from the heavens. They needed Lord Shiva to defeat them, and the god of destruction was no longer interested in anything. There was no one who could encourage him to break his meditation. He was uninvolved, unmoved, and heartbroken. Parvati's determined heart, however, would hear no objection. My sweet fragile daughter, what will you do with a life filled with penance? You have been raised a princess. You belong in the palace. Her father's sad eyes pleaded with Parvati to reconsider. She comforted him with a gentle smile. I belong with my Lord. That is the only place I can ever truly belong. I was born to be with him. I know it as surely as I know the sun will rise in the morning. The Mountain King saw the fire of determination in his daughter's eyes, and he knew there would be nothing to dissuade his strong-willed princess. With a raised hand in blessing, he bade her farewell. Matting her own long hair to look exactly like his, Parvati donned a sari as white as the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas and left home. She journeyed to the same cave where she had first seen her beloved. His name whispered with her every breath as a near constant mantra. She lost herself in meditation on Mahadev. She refused to eat, and she refused to sleep. She had accepted the role of a Brahmacharini, a yogini. Her life held nothing but austerity. If that was the only way she could dedicate herself to Lord Shiva, then she would do so until she took her last breath. O beautiful goddess, even engaged in harsh austerities, your form glows with an exquisite brilliance. With a mala in your hand, you constantly chant the name of your beloved. With an unmatched resolve and intense longing within your heart, you seek to do the impossible, and not through brute strength, but through sheer force of will. You remind us that in order to achieve the greatest things in life, namely loving devotion, we have to adopt an attitude of fixed determination and patience. O merciful Brahmacharini, all glories unto you. Please bless us with a fraction of your love, devotion, and patient enthusiasm, for that is the only way to attract the heart of our Supreme Lord. Srimati Brahmacharini Devi ki jai. Ambe Mata ki jai. So we see many times, even within the form of Vedavati, who wanted to be the consort of Lord Vishnu, she engaged herself in thousands of years of penance, seated in deep meditation, with fixed determination, patience, and enthusiasm, as my Guru Maharaj likes to say. These are the things which capture the heart of the divine being. This is what can capture the heart of the Supreme when nothing else can. Determination, patience, and enthusiasm. A heart filled with love and longing just for our divine person. This is the example of Brahmacharini Devi. And this is what she can bless us with on this second day, as we all develop a life which is filled with meditation on the heart of our hearts. That meditation takes many forms. Within this movement, this Hare Krishna movement, sometimes that meditation takes the form of prasadam, takes the form of singing and dancing, losing oneself in kirtan. It takes the form of losing oneself in the chosen devotional service of the heart, whether that is writing, drawing, carving, poetry, song, music. Whatever is that devotional service, losing oneself in being busy for the divine becomes that emblem of samadhi, deep meditation on the Lord of the heart. Let the very goddess of bhakti, that goddess of devotion, bless us all with such determination and such steadiness of heart that we can remain true to our character, true to our integrity, true to our values. And what is our character? What is our integrity? At all times, we are souls, forever in a loving relationship with our Supreme Beloved. Let us stay fixed and determined on the path of love and devotion. This is my prayer. This is my hope for all of us, that we can all remain fixed on the path. This is what will give joy to our hearts. And this is what will give joy to the hearts of our Supreme Beloved Lord. Thank you so much for being with me. I look forward to being with you again for day 3, where extraordinary things will happen in this lifetime of Parvati Devi. We'll see what else she'll do. There will be adventures along these days. There will be great prayers. There will be astonishing, mysterious things that will happen. There will be spooky things that happen, gearing up for Halloween. And there will be bliss. Always, there will be bliss and sweetness found in the pastimes of our Divine Lord and His people. Until next time, thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.